When I moved to San Diego many years ago, I started visiting a local park, walking the trails and enjoying the sound of the creek, the birds, and people watching. Being in that space felt like existing outside of human time. There was nowhere else to be, no scheduled tasks, emails, or papers to grade. Hiking or walking would take as long as it needed to. The point was to be with whatever came up and stay with it, and sometimes that included exhaustion and tired feet.
Welcome to the Poetry Lab podcast. The Poetry Lab is a place in your community to write, read, and collaborate. We want to help you find the time, the courage, and the inspiration you need to keep writing your new shit. Are you ready, poet? Let's get into it.
Welcome, dear listeners, to another episode of the Poetry Lab podcast. This is Simonovis, and today I'll be talking about eco-poems, what they are, why they're important, and how we can incorporate them into our writing. Throughout the years, I noticed the changes in weather and how they affected the different trails in the park. For example, there was one trail where hikers needed to get their feet wet to be able to access it. If the creek was high, the trail became inaccessible, so when it rained hard for several days, it was closed. During the hot months, though, the water levels were so low it was hard to believe they could get higher than a foot or so. One time, we had rain for several days, and the creek flooded different parts of the park. My family and I were fairly new to the area and took a trail we thought would mostly be dry. What looks to be shallow puddles were knee-deep mini ponds. It took forever to navigate them, and we got home soaked to our knees in muddy water, and who knows what else, since the creek is not the cleanest body of water. The last 5 years or so, I noticed the changes that lack of rains, droughts, and rising temperatures brought on the vegetation. It became nearly impossible to hike or walk in the summer, unless you were in the park very early to avoid the heat. The vegetation turned from a healthy desert green to a dry, sad green in a matter of weeks, and the heat lasted longer than when we first moved to the area. Changes in weather pattern affect plants and animals as well as people, as we all try to adapt and reconfigure what we thought was summer or fall or even winter. So what does all of this have to do with poetry? Well, eco-poems are a type of poem that explore or focus on environmental concerns and human intervention in the natural world, either in positive or in negative ways. For example, the disappearance of trees and green areas in urban neighborhoods, love poems for an animal species or a specific location. These poems create a sense of awareness and responsibility that emphasizes the connections between the human and more than human worlds. They are different from nature poems because they have a specific purpose. A nature poem is usually about an animal, plant, place, or event, but it doesn't necessarily address concerns related to environmental changes and the roles the human-made world has played in accelerating them. The poet Forrest Gander says, and I quote, "I myself am less interested in nature poetry, where nature features as theme, than in poetry, sometimes called eco-poetry, which investigates both thematically and formally the relationship between nature and culture, language and perception." End quote. But how can language express that relationship? How do we speak about things we don't always understand? And how does culture influence the way we perceive the natural world? These are all questions that come to mind as I read Gander's quote and think about the way that we can approach the writing of eco-poems from our different backgrounds, identities, and experiences. Pushing further on Gander's definition, not all eco-poems are written in this vein. For many Black and Indigenous people of color, the relationship to nature and to the land holds spiritual and ancestral significance, and some of their poems express the sacredness of interconnectedness or the parallels between the lives of animals and plants and their own. Some poets that write in this vein are Linda Hogan, Camille Dungy, Amy Nezukumatato, Russ Gay, and Ada Limon. Now let's look at a poem that beautifully navigates the world of eco-poems. Jane Hirshfield's Common Pigeon, where the author incorporates scientific language and facts to talk about rock pigeons, as they're commonly known, and invites the reader to consider a different way of looking at this despised but common bird. Here's the poem. Called rock dove, columba livia, paloma brava, rats with wings. Of all birds, surely the most ignored, dishonored, despised. No birder exalts, adding you to their life list. On the dinner plate, squab. And yet, able to fly 93 miles per hour on your black barred wings. Your longest recorded flight, 7,200 miles, France to Saigon in 24 days. One 1918 trench-taken messenger pigeon, Kaiser, holds your record lifespan, 31 years. Also, America's longest-held POW. First victory paraded, then kept for breeding. Another messenger, shut down and battle-blinded on the Meuse-Argonne line, took wing again, delivered the capsuled note. We are along the road parallel to 276.4. Our own artillery is dropping a barrage directly on us. For heaven's sake, stop it. 194 soldiers lived, as did the bird, cher ami. Saved by an army medic, given the French Croix de Guerre, standing now in a Smithsonian display case, on one taxidermed leg, domesticable, a consorter with humans. For these, your lives treated too often, as ours are. Subjects, objects of many studies and books. For instance, Making Pigeons Pay, a manual of practical information on the management, selection, breeding, feeding, and marketing of pigeons. Copyright 1946, by Danielle Mitchell Levi. Once a child who raised pigeons. Some who keep you in roofed-up pens and train you to raise have loved you, waiting for months for one who didn't return. City falcons hunt you. City humans, sitting on benches, share with you their bread. Your ring-necked cousins arrive each late June to eat my tree's ripening mulberries. Crows, larger, louder, less peaceful, come then to drive them away. Your average weight, a large coffee mug's 12 ounces. Your lives in the wild, 2.4 years. Wingtip to wingtip, roughly 23 inches. Your first light conversations held on an air conditioner's 12-story pigeon-sized ledge. Even the furious at being wakened recognize the sound as true affection. We who tell children they must not touch you gave you this habitat and story. You are like us. You want to live. You do what you must. You preen, you scavenge, are kept, like us, off places to rest on only by spools of barbed wire, are shooed, are cursed. Like ours, your newborn are helpless. You live amidst and between us, concealing your nests, your dead, the first awkward flights of your young. You share the tending of eggs, the feeding of hatchlings. Like us, you have learned the timing of stoplights. Like us, you are adaptable, resilient, ingenious. You return, when needed, to dwelling on riverside cliffs, meaning you will be among the slower to vanish, meaning also among the longer to suffer. You will glean, like us, this world for as long as you can, lift with your strong, slightly comical, sear-top beaks, its joy scraps, grief crusts, recalcitrant seeds. In flocks crowding any corner and park, you will hide amid flapping flusters and flushes of iridescence. Your pigeonish judgments, jokes, meditations, keep opaque from our knowing also the instruments, magnetic, oral, optic nerve sextant, of your solitary, almost spiritual, home-seeking navigation. So this poem includes a lot of details about the pigeon, from physical and survival traits to historical and scientific facts. using specific language and citing events and references that support the point the speaker is trying to make about how important this creature is despite being ignored, but also how similar to humans, which is evident in the lines, "You are like us, you want to live." That specific turn in the poem leads the reader into a space where pigeons and humans are mirrors of each other. They want the same things and adapt to the world in similar ways. Like when it says, "Like ours, your newborn are helpless," or "Like us, you have learned the timing of stoplights. Like us, you are adaptable, resilient, ingenious." The layering of research with a more emotional rendering of the pigeon makes this poem really effective. It's an appeal of sorts, inviting us readers to consider the possibility of wonder in the mundane. I could say so much more about this poem and go on reading poems to you and talking about them, but of course we only have so much time. If you want to read some examples, I wrote an article for the Poetry Lab's Resource Center titled More Than Human Worlds, 5 Important Eco-Poems, where I discuss some of my favorite poems and leave a couple of book recommendations to check out. There's also a prompt at the end of the article for you to try. And speaking of prompts, I have a couple of them to offer now that you've listened to poems and gotten an idea of where this eco-poem stuff is going. For the first prompt, I want you to think about a place you know well that is no longer the same, or maybe it's no longer there. It could be your childhood neighborhood, an ice cream shop you visited in the summer. Maybe it's a park, a family member's house, a restaurant. Write a 2-stanza poem where one stanza talks about or describes this place as it was, and the second stanza focuses on the present time. So, what does this place look like now? Why is it different? Think about your emotional connection to the place and what makes it special. You can even focus on a specific time you visited. The stanzas for this poem can be of any length, so feel free to try, experiment, and do whatever feels right for you. For the second prompt, we're going to work on something related to Jane Hirshfield's poem about the pigeon. Choose an animal or plant that people don't really think about, or that it's usually ignored or misunderstood. For example, flies and the role they play in the ecosystem, or sloths being more than a cute animal. Do some research about this being. What is their scientific name? What are some things that make it unique? How do they relate to humans? Where do they live? What do they eat? Write your poem weaving in all of these elements. Make a case for the appreciation of this being. Whatever prompt you choose, or even if you choose both, have fun. Let the language and the places, animals, or plants guide your writing. Surprise yourself. Before I close, I want to leave you with a couple of book recommendations. The first one came out last year, and it's called You Are Here, Poetry in the Natural World. It's edited and introduced by Ada Limon and has an incredibly rich variety of poems and voices. The other one just came out this year. It's edited by Anne Fisher-Wirth and Laura Gray Street, and it's called Attached to the Living World, a new eco-poetry anthology. You can find both of these wherever you get your books. You can also find links to the poems we read today, as well as to all the references I mentioned in the episode notes. In this episode, we talked about what eco-poems are, learned about a few authors who write eco-poems, heard some great poems, and tried out a couple of prompts to expand our repertoire. If you like this episode, please give us a like and a follow, and help us spread the word about our podcast by texting the link to a few creative friends. You can also find us at www.thepoetrylab.com/podcast. Be sure to check out our curated playlist for a deeper look on DIY marketing tips, writing techniques, and inspiration to create. Again, I'm Leonora Leo Simonovis, and you can find me on Instagram at Leo Simonovis, or check out my website at www.leonorasimonovis.com. That's all for now. I'll catch you soon at the Poetry Lab.